And call to order our work session, Goodyear City Council, 26 April, October, '09. We have one item on our agenda, and it's for discussion only. No action can or will be taken. And Councilmember Souza is not with us this evening. We'll start with, in fact, the single item is an update on the mid-year financial review, including city revenue and expenditure information, and John Fischbach will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight we hope to provide you with an overview of where we are at the end of the first quarter of the fiscal year. What we'll do is look at some economic indicators. We'll look at the general fund revenues for the first quarter performance and the historical performance. We'll look at some long-range forecasts for the construction sales tax, the development revenue, and the general fund revenues and expenditures, which are the bulk of the general fund. We have a brief forecast of the other funds, and then we will talk about the next steps. The economic indicators are bad, but they could be worse. So that's the good news. And that's all the good news. Real gross domestic product, the GDP, for the second quarter of 2009 is contracted at a 0.7% rate. But this is far better than the previous estimate of 1% contraction, which was released last month. Consumer Confidence Index, the CCI, declined 1.5 points in September to a reading of 53.1. Still well above the record low reading of 25.3 in February. The CCI is a measure based on survey of 5,000 households. That declined 1.5 points in September. The index of leading economic indicators rose for the fifth consecutive month in August. August reading was 102.5, which was the highest since January of 2008. The Consumer Price Index rose by 0.4% in August. The CPI has risen 1.4% over the last 12 months. The CPI, the 1.4% increase, was primarily due to a 9.1% surge in gasoline prices. Compared to the same month last year, the general price level is down 1.4%. Excluding food and energy, core consumer prices inched up 0.1%. Since core inflation remains contained, the Federal Reserve has opined that it does not currently view the threat of inflation as imminent. The unemployment rate stayed essentially flat in August of 2009 at 9.1%. The state's unemployment rate in August of 2008 was 5.9%. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, an average of 1,614 building permits were issued each month between June and August 2009. This amount includes an average of 1,494 single-family residential building permits and 120 multifamily permits. On a month-over-month basis, the number of single-family and multifamily permitting activity increased 0.6%. Year-over-year activity in each of these segments decreased 14.1% and 81.2% respectively. According to ASU's August real estate report, a total of 9,080 single-family existing home sales occurred in August at average median resale prices of $139,000. The 9,080 sales was 21% below July and 21% above levels of a year ago. The median resale price of $139,000 remained relatively unchanged from the prior month, decreasing by $1,000. Relative to a year ago, prices have fallen 21.9%. Since the June 2006 high of $267,000, prices have fallen 47.9% in the Phoenix area. Utilizing the most recent MLS data, the month's supply of housing increased slightly between July and August. At the current rate of existing home sales, it would take 5.9 months to deplete the current inventory of unsold homes. The comparable figure in August 2008 was 10.2 months, so it is getting better. The measure reached a high of 16.7 months in September of 2007. Take a look at the total sales tax revenue for fiscal year 10, the budget, and the actual. Total sales taxes are tracking with the budget. You can see the significant drop from 1 year ago, which is roughly $800,000 per month. But we are tracking on the budget as conservatively as it was estimated. The white line indicates the budgeted revenues for fiscal year 10. The jump you see beginning in October is the result of the 0.5% sales tax increase that was approved as part of the fiscal year 10 budget. You can see the monthly collections are estimated to increase about $400,000 per month from approximately $2.2 million to $2.6 million as a result of the increase, which will be reflected in the month of October. This will result in additional revenue of about $3.6 million if returns continue to track with the budget. We had estimated $3.1 million in additional revenue as a result of the 0.5 cents sales tax increase.
What did you just say the estimate was?
3.1. The non-construction sales tax is holding its own. Here's a look at the non-construction sales tax. Again, the budget line is in white and jumps in October based on the increase in sales tax rate of 0.5%. The first quarter budget is at about $1.7 million per month. Beginning in October, the budget is set at $2.1 million per month as a result of the rate increase, which is about $400,000 per month, or the $3.6 million I've already referenced. Restaurants and retail are doing well. Hotels are really weak, but represent a small portion of the non-construction revenue. This is a look at the total construction revenue from the sales tax. Although we are tracking with the budget, we were extremely conservative in the budget this year. It is tracking with the budget, but we see a drop in revenue from the prior year, about an $800,000 drop each month for the first 3 months. We are continuing to watch this carefully. We have budgeted to collect about $500,000 each month, and as you see, it's almost right on the target for that. Although the I-10 widening project is scheduled to end soon, we have received several site plans, which is good news. The Marriott Fairfield Inn and Suites on the northwest corner of Bullard and I-10. It's a 4-story hotel with 283 guest rooms. And the Drury Inn and Suites site plan was approved this last month. That's an 8-story hotel with 210 rooms, and that's on the southeast corner of Bullard and McDowell. Here's the total permit and plan review revenue. This is a look at the past 4 years. It gives you an idea of how far this revenue has dropped. For example, in 2006, the monthly activity for the first quarter was at or above $1 million, compared to this year, when his activity is between $320,000 and $240,000.
John, how is this tracking per budget?
I will address that in a moment. We are tracking below budget. We budgeted $6 million in development revenue for fiscal year 10. We estimated about $4.7 million for development activity and added an additional $1.3 million for the regional mall. Based on the first quarter collections of $833,000, we are estimated to finish the year at about $3.3 million. We are talking to Westcor about the timing of the mall and about receiving $1.3 million prior to the submittal. So this is an area that is a direct result of the weak economy. However, as you will see, there are reports that indicate a gradual recovery in this area.
The 3.3 does not represent, or does it represent the assumption of West Course participation?
No, it does not.
It does not. So that would bring it to 4.6. Okay.
Here's a look at, here's a look at the total permit activity for 12 months, September 2008 to September of 2009. You see about a high of about $10 million down to about $4 million. It seems to indicate that the decrease is leveling off, so we have to ask ourselves the question, have we hit the bottom? Taking everything into account, this is the variances from the budget estimates. The development related is the biggest problem. It's $6 million, and the green is the budget, and the yellow is the fiscal year 10 estimate, 4.7. The $26 million in non-construction sales taxes, $6.2 million in construction sales taxes, $11 million in the state shared revenues. So the total revenues on a rough projection basis are $60 million in the budget and $58.9 million in actual. So we are tracking very close to the budget. The chart identifies the major revenue sources: development-related, non-construction and construction sales taxes, and state shared revenue. Other sources include property tax, which is about $5.6 million, franchise fees about $2.5 million, and various other fees of $2.9 million. Going forward, as we begin to prepare for fiscal year 11, we are anticipating modest development activity over the next year or two, which will impact our development-related revenue, including construction sales tax. However, we are anticipating stable returns in non-construction sales tax. We are on the way out of the recession. According to a recent report from Elliott Pollock, there are several reasons why a recovery will take some time, however. Some confidence will return, but consumers will still feel poor. That is the wealth effect. Home sales will eventually increase, but the housing supply will still exceed the demand. Job losses will continue past the recession ending date, and gains will be slow to materialize. The stock market will initially surge, and then development will be slow. Just getting started with problems in the commercial real estate. We have not seen the bottom of the commercial real estate yet. Excess production capacity will limit investment. And there is little pent-up consumer demand created during the downturn. 5-year historical revenues, actual versus budget. In 2008 and 2009, you can see the impact of the recession on the budget. You can also see the impact on the boom on the budget in 2006 and 2007, where revenues came in far higher than the expenses. Again, for 2010, we are tracking on the budget, $59.9 million. Construction sales tax forecast. The construction sales tax has been a key resource that has been declining. We did budget $6.2 million in fiscal year 10. This is anticipated to drop in fiscal year 11 based on what we are seeing this year. The slowdown in development activity. Also of note, large construction projects have been completed. For example, the stadium and the large commercial developments. Beginning in fiscal year 12, we are anticipating growth of about 10% per year based on recent Phoenix Metro study completed by R.H. Brown that forecasts a gradual increase in housing permits. This is permit and plan review, budget and forecast. Permit and plan review revenue is a key to the city that has dramatically dropped from 2007. The actual collected in fiscal year 9 was $4.4 million. Fiscal year 10 reflects modest development activity plus the submittal of the regional mall. Fiscal year 11 reflects modest development activity, and beginning in fiscal year 12, based on projections from the second quarter of the calendar year 2009, and that's from the Greater Phoenix Real Estate Consensus Forecast, issued by the W.P. Carey School of Business at ASU. The market returns to its normal level activity based on a modified version of the R.L. Brown Phoenix housing market. What we did in order to do these forecasts was we have taken a consensus from the APS forecasts, ASU Realty forecasts studies, the Belfiore Real Estate Consulting, C.B. Richard Ellis, Commerce Realty Advisors, Elliott Pollock and Company, Griffin Consulting, Grubb and Ellis BRE Commercial, Marcus and Milchap, Southwest Growth Partners, and the University of Arizona Eller College. Also, the R.L. Brown forecast did not project Goodyear's single-family permit growth rate, but rather the Valley's growth rate. And what we did was calculate the city's share of the growth based upon recent and historic information about how much Goodyear has captured of the total Valley. Okay, here is the forecast for the historical and the projected for the housing. In the past year, it has been as high as 7% in Goodyear. Based on the modified version of the R.L. Brown Phoenix housing market forecast issued in January of 2009, we should see new construction residential housing starts in the Valley increasing over the next 5 years at a rate of about 20%, beginning in 2012, as the Valley's housing market returns to its normal level of activity. This shows the total sales tax, the current history, and the projection. The green is non-construction, and the gold or yellow is the construction sales taxes. The green, you can see that non-construction is projected to be rather stable, and construction sales taxes have declined significantly, and we do not expect it to recover anytime soon. This chart shows the state shared revenue. Actual from fiscal year 2007 and includes estimates through fiscal year 2015. State shared revenues are comprised of three sources: urban revenue sharing, state income tax, which is estimated to decline 25% in fiscal year 11. So now we're looking at the 11 budget, and as you can see, we're getting into some additional problems. State sales tax and the auto in lieu of. The state income tax is in gold. You can see a drop from fiscal year 10 to fiscal year 11 of about $1.5 million. Now, it was just released by the state, and the Arizona League of Cities confirmed it just this last week. The out years beginning in 2012 assume the legislature does not reduce or eliminate any of the noted sources, something we cannot guarantee. As we have shown, we are projecting to meet the budget this fiscal year, in fiscal year 10. This chart depicts a deficit beginning in fiscal year 11. If the result of the trend that we are seeing, which forecasts declines in revenue and increases in expenditures, it is the result of that. As we have seen, revenues are projected to continue to decline into fiscal year 2011. Revenues are projected at $57 million and expenditures at $69 million. I hesitate to identify the gap tonight. We are only 3 months into the fiscal year, and it's very difficult to project at this time what the budget will be. But that is the basic trend that we're looking at right now. What's important to communicate is that the trend that we are seeing is continued decreases. Decreases in revenue, estimated $2 million in development-related revenue, $1.5 million in state-shared revenue. Increases in operating costs, estimated increase in health care of about $1.2 million. The CIP-related needs, such as $1.5 million for the radio and the telephone systems. There are other capital improvement projects that are related to those operating costs, but they are in out years 2013. Another factor contributing to the shortfall in fiscal year 2011 is the $3.1 million that was used to balance the fiscal year 10 budget this year. That revenue isn't there, so it has essentially decreased revenue by an additional $3 million. Lastly, this forecast assumes the mall does not move forward in the short term. If it does, this is a totally different economic picture entirely. Just to repeat, the forecast suggests several factors for a general fund shortfall beginning next year. Decline in revenue, development activity, related activity is estimated to be about $2 million below this year's activity. And declines in state-shared revenues are estimated to be $1.5 million below this year's receipts. Again, we were in the same economic situation for fiscal year 10. One measure used to balance the budget was the use of reserves. We are not looking at that as an option for right now, which puts us $3.1 million deeper. I did note the additional operating costs related to the CIP projects. In particular, to fiscal year 11 is the telephone system. And that will cost us approximately $635,000 is the estimate right now. Health insurance is projected to increase next year by about $1.2 million. We are still working on this. The city pays an estimated $4.6 million annually for health care. The estimated increase in fiscal year 11 is $1.2 million. We have also included at the present time for planning purposes $1.2 million for merit adjustments. At some point, we must adjust salaries upward so that the organization remains competitive. And since we're just at the early projection forecast stages, we have included that for planning purposes. Here's a quick look at the other funds. The forecast for the street fund projects stable revenues for the next 5 years. Note that there is a general fund subsidy of $1.5 million going into the streets fund each year. The city is obligated to contribute to the maintenance of the streets as part of the agreement related to the HERF funds. However, we may reduce the amount based upon projected general fund needs down to roughly $300,000, so we have roughly $1.2 million of general funds that could be worked with. The sanitation fund is right on target, and it shows sustainable revenues. The rates are adequate to support the operations of each year. The combined water and wastewater fund, this assumes the planned rate increases, and it is more than adequate, as you can see, to pay for the fund's expenses. The fund balance, as it builds, a portion will be attributed to capital projects and system maintenance. So we will be funding those over a period of time. The revenue projections are included as based in the rate study. So we have included those in this study. Where do we go from here? We will continue to monitor revenues and expenditures. City staff recently, last week, identified $1.1 million in budget reductions, further budget reductions that we have implemented, are in the process of implementing, to the existing budget. About $800,000 is attributed to reductions in commodities, from consulting fees and professional services to reductions in overtime to general supplies. The balance was attributed to salary savings as a result of freezing positions temporarily or permanently, or redeploying existing staff to other positions throughout the organization. We will continue to review current service levels to ensure that we are focused on the delivery of core services, and we will come back to you as part of the budget process as we reprioritize services so that we are balanced. We will also look at revenue opportunities. We will be bringing the user fee study to you for review soon. There are several opportunities to change the existing fee structure so that the costs for services are recovered. The last time the city updated its fee structure was roughly 5 years ago. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that's the presentation this evening. I'm sorry it couldn't be better news, but I think that this is an accurate reflection of where we are and where we're trending. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, let me, comments or questions? Let's start over here with Mr. Pizzillo.
Couple. I was trying to keep a quick score, and I know you don't want to lock it in because I know you're only early in there, but I came up to with about $8.4 million in possible structural shortfall next year.
That's probably right, because the 3.1 would be on top of that.
Other questions, are there any opportunities we may have out there at the ballpark for events to maybe generate some additional positive revenue?
Possibly. We've just hired a development coordinator for the ballpark, and their charge is to go out and drum up business for the ballpark. And we're keeping running totals of what businesses are coming, and a lot of them are coming. It's just going to take some time, though, to get that word out.
Okay. So other than maybe the ballpark and then some of the other enhancements you may have with was it cost recovery type of thing, those are the only things you see on the forefront for possibly some revenue enhancements?
Recreation is probably the one that offers the most likelihood of fee increases. I believe that the recommendation that has come from the consultant is to do fee increases that will total almost $867,000. However, we believe that that is too aggressive, and that's why we're looking at it now and scrubbing it to look at what is reasonable, because you obviously can't recover 100, well, not obviously, you shouldn't try to recover 100% of the costs for kids programs, for example. Perhaps adult programs you can, but that may also be too much of an increase to implement all at once. So we're trying to balance those before we bring that forward to you. Other than that, there probably isn't a whole lot of opportunity for fee increases in the budget.
Another question. State, I was reading recently, is about $2 billion short in this year's budget. I assume staff is following that right now, but any concerns that with the state trying to figure out a way to balance that, and then I think they have like a $3 million one inherent built in the following year's budget. Any concerns they may go after some of our state shared revenue in the legislature?
We're obviously very concerned about that. I mentioned that the state shared revenue slide that I showed you assumes that the state will not do it. But as you know, we have to fight that off every year.
Right.
I don't think we can assume that anything's going to happen from the state, but we need to be very cognizant, and that's one of Romina's primary charges, is to keep track of the state legislature, and all departments are also keeping track of it.
I appreciate that, because that's a concern of mine. I've seen that shortfall grow so large, especially the $2 billion now, and the fact that they haven't totally addressed that over the last period of time. I'm concerned about where they're going to look to try to balance those budgets. But no, I appreciate the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Antonio?
Just digesting. So I'm sitting here listening to all of this and trying to figure out what the next 12 months are going to look like. Joe pointed out the 8.4 structural deficit, and then the 3.1 in reserves would be in addition to that? Okay, so we're looking at 11.5, give or take. I mean, that's the moving target right now,
That's
right?
the moving target right now, yes.
Okay.
So go out and buy a lot.
More than a lot. Okay. All right. I think it's got to chew on this and figure out what we do next and where we start.
And as I indicated, it's way too early to do projections and forecasts rather than just the trends, but these are the trends that we're looking at as carefully as possible.
What month do we get the December holiday season?
Will
sales
come
taxes?
in February.
So actually, the chart that you showed, we always are in a 2-month lag for sales tax. Your little indicator should really kind of be at the next month
No.
to show.
We'll be getting it this month.
So you are reflecting it, even though you haven't, okay. One interesting thing that Georgia and I had attended a conference, air quality, on Wednesday, and it was interesting, there was a panel, and one of the panelists was from the Home Builders Association. And he had reported something that I had not heard, that there was, the slight jump in increase in permits for new homes in June and July, and it was due to the fact that there was some kind of government program or something that was out there.
$8,000.
$8,000.
Right, and so that's why, so in a way, it was kind of a false positive by looking at that.
Yes, it was. We experienced, I think it was 80 in June and 83 in July. Last month, we were down to 17, and this month, as of Friday, we were running at 33, so twice last month, but still more down in the pre-$8,000. There is rumors, or that the government is trying to extend that $8,000 program. Don't know if it'll happen or not. If it does, we will certainly keep track of that.
Gotcha. I'll be interested to see the fee structures. I had asked for that back before we had the sales tax increase, and I'm curious to see what that's going to look like. And it will truly be interesting also to see the healthcare increases that it's going to take by our employees, quite frankly. Thank you.
Councilmember Cavalier.
Do we have any, do we know what the rate of foreclosures are? I haven't seen it since the 1st of June.
No, I'm not aware of it, Frank. I can.
Mario's still tracking that?
No.
Okay.
We'll find out, though.
Is there a
let you
way
know.
to do that? Yeah, because I'd like to see what we're losing or gaining in the foreclosed homes. Are we selling those? Are those being sold? Are they?
Part of the problem is right now that the banks are, this isn't meant to be negative, but manipulating is the word that comes to
Yeah,
my mind.
right.
But they're manipulating it on when they release the homes for sale. So there is no real way to tell how much of a pent-up demand there is in the foreclosures until the banks come clean with all of that. The 5.9 months is the number of homes that are on the market right now. And that measures against the 16.7 months that was in 2007 or 8, I think.
Those are just the homes on the market.
That's the homes
Because
on
a
the
lot of
market.
these are,
Right.
foreclosure are not on the market.
That's correct. And we can't really get a handle on that, but we'll try and get you the information.
John, thanks for the presentation. It's sad, but thank you. I think there's one thing we can do. We can certainly be talking to our legislatures down at the state capitol. I giggle, but, they do listen once in a while, and I think that we need to put a little pressure on them about that shared revenue and how important it is to the cities. And moreover, I think the cities have been more responsible in meeting their budget than the state has. And I don't think we should be penalized for it. So that's going to be one of my directions, is to see what effect we can have downtown.
Okay, just ask council, we have time. We've got 9 months to go in this fiscal year, or 8.5, whereas we didn't have a lot of time in the last budget planning. Would you like to consider assigning some citizens to a committee to help us look at cutting costs of city government?
I think they're going through that right now.
I didn't know that. What-
I mean, I think.
I'm talking about a citizen committee of our residents, people who are actually footing the bill. Give some help to all of us.
I don't have a feel for that. My biggest concern is what size. I was reading somewhere where Gilbert had 54, and I'm thinking, how do you get a working committee with 54, personally?
Well,
you know?
I would assume that's several subcommittees, but I don't know.
I would think if we waited till after the first of the year, we might be better we'd have a better handle on where we're going, what we need. Would a subcommittee have enough information or be able to gather enough information now?
If you wait till January, it won't. It's a matter of determining how we do business now to see if all those activities and actions and events and people, how do they feel about the necessity for those?
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know what? I think that you're just having another set of eyes looking at something, just as you did, John, having the department heads switch departments and look at their books. I mean, that's the same thing. It's another set of eyes. Getting the citizen input of saying the department can show each thing and the citizens can look at it and can say, you know what, our opinion is that this could be cut, or that we feel strongly that this needs to say. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting that kind of opinion, and I think that starting it soon enough. Now, Frank does have a point. I mean, you get through a couple more months, especially through the holidays, you can get a better, accurate picture of our finances. But you also have to be well aware that we don't want the committee to come with a response May 28th. You know, they're going to have to come, say,
Yeah, but
mid-April.
one thing, as we're showing right now, I mean, just this last week, I implemented $1.1 million in additional budget cuts. I mean, it doesn't matter if they come in with advice later. I mean, so that's okay.
But it's just getting another opinion, and I understand. You know, the mayor asked for this at the last budget issue, and it wasn't something that we could do at that time. We needed to pass a budget, so he's asking for it again for this next coming year, and I don't think there's a problem with that.
No, I don't think there's a problem with it. I just wondering what the timing should be on it, because we know so little. We don't know where it's going.
Maybe finance
Do we have
department
enough
should give us
information?
a little.
Well, I would certainly hope that whoever serves, if in fact this happens, that serves on this committee, that they be extremely qualified, because this is not an easy process. And the time it would take to educate, I'm still working on it, and I've been on the council 4 years, and I'm on my 5th year, so I would really question the citizens that would be appointed for a committee like this. And the other thing is, where does that fall in making decisions to progress in the next year? Do we have to wait until the citizens, something comes up, so our decision-making is on hold until the citizen committee is finished with their assessment? So I think you have to be careful of how you're going to run a committee like this. You know, we're elected officials. That's what we're elected for. The telephone number is published. I listen anytime anybody says anything. Anytime anybody suggests something, I go right to John and say, this is what they're suggesting. Someone suggested this week to me about, is there some way in the retirement process, can we delay paying certain retirement to people? And so I was going to come to John on that. So I don't see where the public does not have the opportunity at any time to come forward. No, I know you're not. And Mary, I'm not accusing you of that. I'm just making, make your point. I make my point that I worry about the timing of it all and the decision-making we have to do. I'm not against the Citizens Forming Committee, but I think we should have certainly.
We do not want to have this, in fact, I'm not sure it's supported, interfere with current operations. But we have people in this city who are far more experienced than people in this group in leading large organizations, and they've been cutting costs for many, many years. They've done it, they know how to do it, and they may find things that we've missed. I would suspect they would, but I'd like those to pull those experts together.
Okay.
And they understand the issues that you and I face.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they do.
And who would pick this committee?
I think it would be this group, maybe three of us. Or, actually, we have to determine the strategy of it first.
Well, that's what you
And then-
have the word, the strategy, that's
Yeah,
what
we
worries
have
me.
to agree on that, but three of us could look at that, and it doesn't have to be me. And then all of us would agree on what people are on it.
Well, it's a recommending body, I'm sorry, Rob,
that's okay.
just as planning and zoning is, it's a recommending body, correct? Is that-
Absolutely.
That's, yeah.
It's an ad hoc committee.
But just
It's not
because,
permanent.
just because there's a group of people up here sitting on the city council, and we've been elected to the city council, doesn't mean we know more than what's out there. There are a lot more better heads in math and in finance than up here.
Well, I didn't mean to infer that, absolutely.
Well, that's what it came across.
No, I'm sorry, take that inference away. Anybody felt that inference at all? I have struggled to learn budgeting and the terms and all that. I don't put myself out there at all as the expert, but I have depended on staff and the people that we hire to give me that information. So, okay, just clear that up, Frank. Don't get that word started.
I've always been for citizen engagement, so I have no problem with that. I think realistic timing of that is probably January 1st. I think it's unrealistic to put applications out there, if we put the public service interest form type application out there that we have in the past, I think it's unrealistic for us to get those back, evaluate those, look at them, make sure that there's a fair and equitable representation of folks, because if we just have one segment of our community that's, energized and interested in this, which I think is great, I want to make sure that the mom and dad that's paying for soccer fees is also included in that mix, or that that the resident that is potentially looking at a multi-gen center is included in that. And so when I think back on our planning and zoning appointments, we look at I wouldn't say socioeconomic representation, but we look at demographic representation, geographic representation, and a variety of folks, such that we're getting a variety of opinions in that mix. So I'd be for it. I think realistically, we'd be looking at the first of the year by the time you get.
We just
It's
don't want to
November
look for
1st.
the committee condensed.
I say put it out there. Put it out there and in focus.
Yeah.
Go, do it properly. Talk
And
about, let's have the debate, maybe not tonight, about
I'm not debating.
what the mission of that committee is, given that this is a new idea that was presented to us, but let's formulate a specific
Can we get the
direction for
strategy
the
down?
committee.
We can
Could we
get
do
back
that?
to you.
That's-
Who would like to do strategy in this council?
I think we can have that discussion. I think we can look at Gilbert's example. Gilbert did this recently,
that's not
and it's a
bad.
behemoth. It's 54 people. I think that's an unmanageable number. But I think Phoenix has some rendition of this. Scottsdale might even have some rendition of this. You may have seen it in some of the other northwestern, parts of the valley. And so, I say we assign staff to come back to us concurrent to putting the call out there for folks that are interested in. We don't have to know exactly what the mission of the committee is in terms of, it can be cost effective.
We can put a strategy paper together for you all to take a look at in the next week or two. And I just need to say, and I know that you aren't suggesting this, but our finance people, our staff has done a fantastic job. I just want to acknowledge that.
Oh, I agree,
tonight.
John.
We have navigated our way through this budget crisis in a remarkable fashion, and they deserve an awful lot of credit.
John, I'm not taking that
Well,
from
I know,
them
I said,
whatsoever.
I understand that. I'm not being defensive. I just wanted to acknowledge
Well,
that.
the other thing that will come out of this, a better understanding for the public as to what the staff has done and how well they've done it, and yet there might be, as the mayor says, some additional ideas that can put forth. So what are we at? We're going to say
Well,
it, yes, or how we handle that?
But can I say, I got a quick comment on there. I think, too, it's also very clear that we define the scope and what the mission is. And the reason being, when you have a $8.4 million structural deficit, you're not just talking about a few dollars here and there. You may be talking about how service delivery is impacted. So in my view, I think it's real important that you get a cross-mix of the community to make sure you have all the interests covered, because you may be talking about service impacts when you're looking at these kind of money. So I don't have a problem as long as we make sure we clearly define the scope, and then we also clearly make sure we have adequate representation of, a diverse group throughout the city.
We definitely are talking service impacts because the general fund is 60% police and fire. That leaves 40%, assuming that the other funds are balanced, as I showed you this evening. That leaves 40% that you're going to be really arguing about, because most of the public will believe that public safety is of the utmost importance. And that doesn't leave you a whole lot of room, 40% of $60 million, to cut $8 million to $12 million. So it is difficult. We've already eliminated 67 positions.
And I don't think, if you talk about scope, I don't think we should delimit it to specific departments.
No, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that.
No, I
just-
think, but I think you have to be cognizant that the scope, I mean, you're not forming a, you're talking, if you're talking about cost effectiveness and cost cutting, you're talking about prioritizing perhaps of services and
That I agree.
and that sort of thing, but you're not necessarily initiating a bond committee or a property tax committee or a, you know, I mean, they may come out with recommendations from that, but I don't want to give a false, you know, a misnomer. Once we have that discussion, again, I assume this will come back to the council for an action item based on this work session, but some committees can.
Are you saying what you don't want to happen
Side
is
of-
when the committee is finished, that they feel that they're going to direct the council to take all the advice and incorporate? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying
And-
if
and
we
Ms.
are
Turner?
going to come back in March, April, May, June, July, and make budget impacting decisions based on a committee's input and some recommendation from that committee, then we need to give a clear, concise, and achievable objective to them over an 8 to 12-week period. And there's an opening and a sunset, and
That's
and
our
they come
strategy.
back,
That's
and
what-
and that's part of the strategy
Yeah.
is
So-
if, you know, it's a high impact, you know, discussion that occurs, and probably a pretty vibrant one, I'm sure, in terms of service delivery, but come back, you know, with
Well,
some
I'm sure it
definable
also is a staffing,
recommendations.
it's a staffing issue. We all have to think about that and the time
Right.
it's going to take, so.
As I mentioned, we've already laid off 67 people, so
Yeah.
the staffing issue is one that concerns me, but
Those
it's,
positions, but you haven't laid off 67.
that's correct.
Yeah, there's a difference.
But yes, but we have reduced 67 people from the
Positions.
workforce, yes.
Positions, yes.
But there were people in those positions prior to their vacating the
Not
position.
all of those.
Well, they all were occupied at some time or other.
So do we give John some opportunity and time to sort of prepare this to, as far as
Well,
staff time, and then we have someone do the strategy on how we're going to approach this?
yeah, again, I would like 3 council members to lay out a strategy to start with and give it to the staff that this is the overarching principle that we're seeking here, and then let the staff provide a more detailed strategy. But I think the council needs to start with the overall policy on what we're looking for here, because it is significant, and it absolutely, if we're going to do it, it needs to be done how we want it done in such a way that when we get a result, we're pleased with the effort, and we're pleased with the planning. And I don't think anything should be taken off the table.
No, that's right.
No, I'm not saying that, but.
No, you didn't say that. I didn't.
Yeah, okay.
No, you didn't.
No. I think it's fair game. I think we just have to get, there has to be a parameter and a scope, because.
Would you like to have 3 of us and 3 other than I? It's my idea, 3 other people come up, give an overarching strategy to give to the staff.
I'd be willing to work with it.
I think Joe's got to
I
be
think
on that
Joe
for
is,
sure.
For sure.
That's a must.
Well,
I think
Joanne?
Joanne might be a good one.
So you want to
That'd be a good one.
spend the next 2 weeks, the 3 of you together, is that okay?
Okay? Yeah.
Joanne?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Is it Joanne? me,
Frank
and-
and
Frank?
The Joes, no.
The 2 Joes? Okay.
Okay. If there's
Oh,
any
wait, Joe?
comments from the public, we're going to go to a regular meeting in a minute, and you can do it in the non-agenda item, okay? If you'd like to comment.
Stay
No,
down here.
it's going to be, we think it's quick.
Yeah, I would think so.
Oh, we hope. But then I'll adjourn this meeting, and